Welcome to the rollout of the House Transportation Package for this year. Very happy to be with you today. I've been saying since the day I got this job as Transportation Finance Chair, it's my intention to do a substantial transportation bill and do it this year. This is certainly a big first step in that direction. We believe we have put together a great package that will finance significant transportation projects in the state of Minnesota. And I look forward to working this through my committee, and we'll see how we do with the Senate once we get a better look at their proposal. We have a plan that's designed to spend $6 billion over the next 10 years. And in fact spend $2 billion on roads in this biennium. These are target numbers that have been an important number for a lot of folks around the Capitol, and we are intending to meet those goals. At the same time, we are reaching out to small cities and townships and counties around the state. There's a new provision in this bill that will fund the local road not the local road program, but the local bridge program. MnDOT has a list of local bridges that are ready to be funded. All they need is the money. As you may recall, the bonding bill didn't quite make it across the finishing line last year. We have money in this bill that will fund this program for some over $12 million a year and build every bridge on this list over the next 2 years. Minnesotans have spoken loudly and clearly that they don't want to have their taxes raised. We will not be raising the gas tax or other taxes in this bill. We believe there is a substantial revenue on the bottom line in the surplus that will do what we need to do to fund this transportation initiative in this biennium. As I said earlier, we're going to do small cities and local bridges, and the $1 billion over 4 years in trunk highway bonds will be serviced by general fund dollars. So we're going to do $250 million a year for the next 4 years in trunk highway bonds that will be funded by serviced by general fund dollars, plus another $300 million going to the Corridors of Commerce program in the form of bonding dollars. We are putting a lot of pressure on the agency to perform efficiently and effectively. We will be asking for them to do the efficiencies that they've promised they can do. They promise that they can do 15% better, and we will hold their feet to the fire to do that. With that, I'll turn this over to the Transportation Policy Chair, Representative Runbeck.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This has been a new committee this year, the Transportation and Regional Governance Policy Committee. And of course, it's an interesting nexus between the governance and the transit that comes out of it. That's really where we've had a lot of conversation and a lot of bills introduced. So you will see traveling on a different course, several governance reform bills that we think are very sound from a practical standpoint, that mean that there will be more involvement from folks who actually understand local government, understand the needs all of the metropolitan area. And we're hoping that the governor will take a look at those. Certainly having an agency with so much power that is really only accountable to the governor is something we ought to all be concerned about. And I think that that has come to the fore. We have some very good bills, and those are going to be taken a look at. In the area of transit, we've been concerned for a while that the state is sharing the cost of transit operations. And overall, transit operations are now $600 million a year, of which the state is participating and subsidizing roughly 2/3 of that. And really without much information about what's working, what's not working. Are we still focusing on mobility, or is this all about economic development? And the concern in the House is that, and we have been told by the chair of CTIB that transit is the catalyst for development. That's the #1 goal. So our concern is, we need to have more involvement. The state should not be just footing the bill for a whole program that continues to grow that we don't have any ability and any say over. So there are several bills working their way through and that are in the transportation finance bill that simply say the state must have the ability and give the explicit authority for light rail projects in particular to move forward. Otherwise, the state will not be participating in subsidizing the operating costs. So I think that's an important understanding to reach, and that is where we're at on that. We do have bipartisan concerns and involvement in our Met Council reform issues. And so I think that that's a good place to be. I guess we'll see just how far the governor is interested in going. We are also interested in looking at fare box recovery. As we know, only about 30% of the costs of light rail and the bus system are covered with a fare box. So, and that has not been looked at since about 2008. And clearly there are more innovative and better ways to fund the fare box and to make sure that tickets are being collected, that there's opportunity maybe off the platform for those tickets to be purchased and so on. So fare box recovery, something we are emphasizing, and I think all folks are going to be interested in that. We've also looked at value capture along the light rail routes, and there again is an opportunity for those properties that are benefiting from the increased value because of a light rail corridor, that they will have be involved in the paying of the operating costs. So a number of things are included in the bill. We still have some ways to go because many issues are unresolved when it comes to CTIB, when it comes to Southwest Light Rail. And so some of this is going to play out, of course, as the weeks wear on. And I'll just bring to your attention that we did, as a House, send a letter to Secretary Chow urging her not to fund Southwest Light Rail. I think 70-plus members of the House signed that letter. So we know that there's some uncertainty about where all that will go. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Representative Runbeck. The only thing I would like to add is that there's a significant amount of pent-up demand all across the state, from citizens in my district to citizens in every district of the state that believe we need to spend more money on transportation projects all around this state. And there's also a broad coalition of groups that are involved with transportation, that are standing behind us with the desire to get a substantial transportation bill to the governor and signed this year. It's been my goal all along, and I believe that this is a big step in that direction with a significant funding package that will build projects all around the state of Minnesota without digging into taxpayers' pocketbooks.
About, if I'm reading this correctly, about 3/4 of your package is financed through bonding. What's the debt service on that, on an annual or biennial basis, roughly? Do you have an estimate on that?
Thank you for that question. I don't have that answer. We're using a variety of bonding sources. Trunk highway bonds from the normal trunk highway pool. We're financing additional trunk highway bonds with the general fund resources, so that keeps those from affecting the 20% guideline that the department has as far as the total indebtedness. General obligation bonds that have been traditionally used for some transportation projects. And also we have, we're asking, excuse me, the capital investment chair to consider funding rail grade crossing projects. We had a number of those in last year's bonding bill, and we're hoping that we can do that again. The projects that we've identified for this first biennium are Moorhead, Red Wing, and Anoka, the Hanson Boulevard project.
Speaking of the biennium, what's your all-in number investing just for the next 2 years in the budget cycle?
Just over $2 billion.
Okay. And how do you feel like that matches up with the Senate?
Well, I haven't had a chance to study their proposal yet, Mary, but I think we have a little bit more substantial package outlined in our bill than they have. But I've been meeting regularly with the Senate chair, and I look forward to negotiating with him at the conference table.
Could you talk a little bit about the $75 surcharge on electric vehicles?
That was a Pat Garofalo bill that came to our committee. It recognizes that right now, since all electric vehicles that are powered by all electricity, do not contribute to the highway fund as substantially as those that burn gasoline. It's just a recognition that we think it's appropriate that they pay a little more.
Would this be a yearly charge?
Annual fee of $75, yes.
If you're choosing to statutorily dedicate these tax revenues, have you given thought, additional thought to constitutionally dedicate it so they won't be ripe for taking in the years to come?
Thanks, Brian, for that question. I know that will be a point of discussion. We are not rolling that out in our initial proposal. There's a variety of ways to move in that direction. But, you know, overall, I believe transportation is one of the fundamental things that state government is expected to fund. And I have no problem making it a priority within the general fund. I think it's absolutely appropriate. We do have some dedicated funds available, and they will continue to be available, but they are inadequate to meet our transportation needs. And making transportation a priority in the general fund budget, as many other states do across the country. If you look around, there's many states that utilize general fund dollars to fund transportation projects, more than that don't, I would guess. And I think that we should step up to the plate and do the same thing.
Mr. Chairman, or Madam Chair, Governor is going to be looking at this proposal, obviously, in light of some of the others that have been brought forward. Make an argument to him on why he ought to go this route. Exclusive of the gas tax, I mean, we know that, you know, he doesn't want, that he wants to do that, but I mean, to talk about why this is viable.
You know, I think you look at sort of both pieces of the package, when you talk about roads versus transit. I think what the bill does is to really make sure that the same logjam doesn't exist that did over the previous 2 years. I mean, I think he's going to like sort of what's happening in the bill and behind the scenes, and I think he's going to say that this is where we can go and we can agree on this.
And why specifically do you think he'll go to it? Because he still is predisposed to the gas tax.
Well, I would add that raising the gas tax has been a failed endeavor, not in just the past biennium, but bienniums before. When we had Democrats in complete control of the legislature and a Democratic governor, they still couldn't raise the gas tax. It's very politically charged, and at this point in time, when we have a surplus of funds, it's just not necessary.
Senator Runbeck, you raise a really interesting policy question about light rail and the use of it. You say that are we concerned about mobility or really about economic development? If it's economic development that light rail is for, does that make it less necessary, less efficient?
I think that it makes the funders of it, it clarifies who should be funding it, certainly, although I guess the case can be made always that our urban core is what charges the engine for the whole state. So, but perhaps in terms of the decision and the overall cost of it and so on, that becomes a debate. I mean, how much really should, if it's really a lot about economic development, shouldn't we actually be thinking that it may be more of a local tax, more of a local obligation?
What are you proposing? Mobility, is it more worthy of funding?
The mobility piece, when you look at, I guess, the route, what has been chosen by the Met Council, and their express charge in the statute is to maximize the availability and uses of federal funds. You'll see that replete and throughout their materials. That's their number one goal. I mean, I argue that when they chose Southwest Light Rail and when they chose light rail, it's to just get as many federal funds as they can possibly get. It's the highest cost, lowest capacity form of transit. So that is the point we keep making. Let's have transit. Let's have good transit that moves people. But let's rethink where we go with this form.
I would just add that at this time, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainties surrounding especially the Southwest Light Rail project. As we've heard from the federal government, the federal funding is kind of on the cusp right now, whether that will actually be approved or not. There's a lawsuit going on that won't be settled till later this summer. And the potential dissolution of CTIB could really change the dynamics of funding in this area. So that's a lot of the reason for us to be very cautious right now and wait for some of these things to sort themselves out.
Representative Torkelson, the governor is going to say you've taken hundreds of millions of dollars from existing tax revenue and focusing it on transportation. Do you know where elsewhere in the budget how you're going to fill those holes?
Well, thank you, Tom, for that question. I don't believe we're creating holes. I believe we're utilizing a portion of the surplus for a priority in the state of Minnesota, that priority being transportation. I don't see any problem with transportation taking its seat at the table as we compete for dollars among the various budget entities that are going to be funded and get dollars out of this surplus. And you will remember that last year, transportation, a substantial transportation bill did not pass, and the bonding bill did not make it across the finish line. We need to catch up.
Apart from light rail, the Metro Transit budget is running a deficit, and that deficit's projected to increase because, in large measure, because of the growing costs of Metro mobility. The Citizens League is out with a proposal suggesting that the state should pay for Metro mobility in some other way. Is that something you've considered?
We do have some information or a position on Metro mobility. We need to have certainly a task force that is going to look at some of the costs. I think, though, when you look at where the MVEST dollars are, and the projection for those is that those are increasing very, very nicely, very steadily, and that is going to be there for Met Council to rely on. So those dollars are maybe not quite in the situation that Met Council was predicting, so I would be interested in what their estimate is now when they look at those new estimates.
Chair Runbeck, can you elaborate on this letter that you said you sent to the U.S. Transportation Secretary and what the argument you made to her was?
Brian, we'd be happy to share a copy with you, but it cites a number of the cases that can be made that it's inefficient, really the result of a poor planning process, that there are pending lawsuits, that the transit-dependent community is not being well served with this line, and that you have a tremendously disastrous co-location of freight rail and passenger rail within a very narrow corridor. Those would be some of the highlights.
Madam Chair, if I can get you to take a step back here and talk about the economic development portion of it. You hinted, and maybe I misread you, that you're looking for other ways of trying to fund this along corridors where there could be substantial economic development opportunities. Are you suggesting perhaps special taxing districts along the corridor to help pay for light rail?
I wouldn't call them taxing districts, but certainly you're going to see the property values increase along those lines. And so there's an increment, and we know what to do with increments. You know, there are things that can be funded with increments. So as the value increases, some of that under the proposal would spin off and apply to the operating costs.
Talk a little bit more about that philosophy that local rail should be paid locally if it's a development project, and yet you're funding corridors of commerce, which is also about economic development with $300 million. How do those two square?
I think that question is probably for me, Rachel. This transit situation, as I said earlier, is very unclear, and what the state may contribute to that is also unclear. Corridors of commerce that you mentioned has been traditionally split half and half between the metro area and greater Minnesota. Those needs are obvious to people that are using our highways every day, and we want to see that we move highway projects forward to keep things growing in our regional corridors that service these regional centers of economic development.
Could the same argument be made that locals are helping to pay for transit and they're trying to keep things growing in their area?
Well, certainly, everybody contributes. It's up to us to try to determine where these resources are best utilized for the sake of the state of Minnesota.
On corridors of commerce, are you planning to specify specific projects that you want to see get funded for those $300 million, and if so, which ones?
Well, thank you for that. I could mention a long list. I'm not going to, although Highway 14 comes to mind. Because it happens to be. But I'm just an example of many representatives that have a similar project in their district. I could name, as I said, I could name a long list. We have done no earmarking at this point in this bill. Whether that is something that is considered as we move through the process or not, I don't know at this time. We believe there are some high priority projects that are not being funded adequately, and if we can get that work done through corridors or through some other mechanism, I'd be happy to support that effort.
Back to transit, are you risking blowing up this whole package with the governor if Republicans don't take a friendlier view of transit?
Well, Mary, this is a first step. We know that. We hope the governor will be at the table when we get to conference committee, that he and his crew will come in and take an active role in the negotiations as we proceed to work this out in conference committee. I'm big on collaboration and input, and I intend to do that. I met with my DFL colleagues of my committee this morning to outline the bill to them before it gets rolled out in my committee today. That's the way I operate, and I welcome the governor's input and his concerns. I know that this will not be wildly popular with the governor and others, but I believe it's a substantial and appropriate proposal, and I will stand behind it as we get this process started.
Would you send him veto bait just to prove that this is the bill you want, or do you think it has to be a negotiated bill that goes to him first?
No, it's not my intention to do veto bait. It's my intention to get a substantial bill assembled and passed and signed. Is there a possibility of a veto? Of course there is. These early deadlines have allowed us a little more time to deal with that, though.
In the past, this bill has kind of gotten muddled in with bonding proposal and budget negotiations. Do you want this discussion to occur separately so it doesn't kind of fall into that same trap it has in the past?
Well, I don't think you can completely ignore the bonding bill when you're talking about transportation. It has a significant effect. It always has had. We've always done local roads. We've always done, in the past, done all the local bridges. This year, we'll be looking at those big local bridges, hopefully in the bonding bill. It is a package. Now, will the timing work out perfectly that we can do everything at once? Probably not. But the intention and the dedication can be part of our discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.